Okay, so in terms of my story, so I had, um, during this time or around this time, I had posted a couple articles on Mike Rinder's blog under a pseudonym. I think I was calling myself Galactic Patrol or something from the Lensman series. And I'd posted a couple, critical essays about the Church of Scientology, because I had given up on the whole get back in their good graces thing. And then I realized, okay, now I'm declared. Now there is no reason for me to hide what I'm doing or who I am or what this is all about. And how did this happen? I was in touch with a woman named Karen De La Carriere out in Los Angeles. She is an ex-Sea Org member, worked directly under L. Ron Hubbard for many, many, many years. And she had a channel, a YouTube channel called Surviving Scientology. And she heard about what had happened. And I can't remember exactly how. I think I got on forums or I got on the phone with her somehow. And she invited me out to LA to be on her channel. And I thought, okay, here we go. I can actually do this under my own name now. And I was eager to talk because, as you have noticed, I don't have a problem talking. And I wanted to get the word out about this. And I thought, I've got things to say. I've got things people should know about in regards to what Scientology is actually up to. And so she flew me out to LA and I did some videos on her channel. She interviewed me. And I came out and it was Chris Shelton Speaks, right? And I'd been around in the Western United States all these years in org management and stuff. So I had met probably thousands of Scientologists. I mean, people kind of knew who my name in one way or another. I wasn't a Scientology celebrity or VIP, but I had been around long enough in the Western United States that all the staff and a lot of the public knew me. So when a video came out with my name saying Chris Shelton speaks out against Scientology, it got some views. And the most amazing thing, though, and I did not see this coming at all, was once those videos started posting, okay, now I was out loud and proud under my own name. I had never done this up until now. And other former Scientologists who had known me during these years, including staff members from Santa Barbara who were no longer Scientologists, who had gotten out, started reaching out to me and contacting me. And I was blown away. I could not believe some of the people who had left that I had lost touch with over all the years. And so we were reconnecting. So in a funny way, I had all this disconnection happen. My ex-wife, friends I had in the Sea Org for, decades. Of course, that all the Scientologists in Minnesota, like my Facebook friend list went to nothing overnight, it went from 100 to 0, right? Like just like that. So I had to rebuild everything, right? So suddenly some of these people are reaching out to me and I'm reestablishing connections with people that I had lost touch with. And I'm introduced to this whole world of, this whole bigger world now of ex-Scientologists and YouTube ex-Scientologists and Facebook groups that were about ex-Scientology. I hadn't been connected with any of that stuff yet. So now I was getting connected into it, and I was seeing that there were actually a lot of people with this, and a lot more than I had even known about before. And I felt again validated, reassured that I was not crazy or stupid, and that I was doing the right thing, and people were reacting with a lot of shock to some of the stuff that I was saying about what was going on behind the scenes, because there was some things I was talking about that other people hadn't been talking about yet. And so I did this series of videos with her, and then I went back home and I thought, well, hell, I've got some things. I sat down and I wrote a very long article, which I had hoped I would be able to get printed in a news media, maybe a local paper or something, there in Minnesota, about why I thought Scientology was going to be the author of its own undoing. right? And the way I constructed the thought process and put it all together was like 6 or 7. I think there were like 6 basic points, and they all basically evolved or revolved around the idea that Scientology's destruction was literally built into its own DNA. That was how I put it. All right, its destruction is in its own DNA, and I think that was the original title of the thing. And it was a pretty extensive article. I think it was about 3,500, 4,000 words or something. Too big to make as a blog post. And I think I had started a blog, and I posted a few articles or something, or reprinted some articles that I had posted on Mike's blog. And I thought I would blog. I thought that would be a way to get some things out there about what I was thinking. But I had this monster article, and it was too big, and I thought, well, hell, what am I going to do here? I could see if I could get it posted in the local paper, but that's only going to be local. That's not going to be international. Nobody else is going to see it. What am I going to do? And I thought, well, hell, wait a minute. What about YouTube? People like watching videos a lot more than they like reading, I learned, because I'd posted some articles, and, maybe 100 people would read it, but it wasn't getting any big, look. And I wanted to get the word out to people all over the place that Scientology was bad news. I was definitely motivated to do that. And I thought, YouTube, maybe I could do YouTube. Maybe I could make videos. And this was the germ that became my channel, because I had this article, and I went out and bought a $99 camera, and I got some white butcher paper to hang on a thing behind me, and I got a couple of lights, and I looked up on YouTube, how do you do lighting and how do you shoot stuff, and I didn't know about it. I had to really do a whole lot of this stuff. I had done a little bit of video work when I was in the church, and I had made a recruitment video when I was in Twin Cities, and that was the first time I'd ever done anything with iMovie or any of that. So other than that one experience, I hadn't ever done any video work. So I was kind of teaching myself how to do it with YouTube videos. What's 3-point lighting? What's this? What's that? And I put these, and I scripted out. I broke the article down into bite-sized chunks. And I scripted out a bunch of about, I think, 5 or 6 videos. And I proceeded to start producing them. And I just put myself in a black T-shirt on a white background, because I didn't want me to be the message. I wanted the message to get across, not me. It wasn't about me. And so I didn't want to talk about me or my story or my thing. I didn't want to do a big emotional appeal. I wanted to talk about what was wrong with the church. And I was inspired by Carl Sagan, because I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want the things I say to last. I want them to be what I learned. I wanted it to be evergreen content. I wanted it to always be relevant. And I knew things about the church that were always going to be true. No matter what the church said or did, or what smoke and mirrors it tried to, show people, I knew this would be the way to do this, would be to put this content out there that was just always going to be true about the church. And so that's why I produced the videos the way that I did. And it took me a while to figure it out. There were weeks in between videos. I wasn't trying to be a YouTuber. I didn't put ads on my videos. I wasn't monetizing anything. I was just trying to get the data out there. And lo and behold, I start posting them, and I contacted Tony Ortega. I can't remember how this happened, if he asked me or if I asked him, but I got him to post the videos on his blog. And he had been the guy who had first introduced me to how horrible Scientology was through his daily articles about it. Excuse me. And I say he's the one who first made me aware of how bad. He's not the one who made me first aware of how bad Scientology was. I figured that out for myself. He's the one who was out in the outside world talking about how bad it was. So I thought, well, he's got an audience that needs to hear what I have to say. Maybe he'll want to post my videos. And he loved them. And he posted them on his channel. And I started getting feedback on them, and people were watching them. And I'm getting hundreds, I'm getting thousands of views on these. And I'm like, God damn, this is what I want to be doing. This is the numbers I want to be reaching. I can reach Scientologists with this, on YouTube, right? And it's a short thing. These videos are 10, 15 minutes long. So it's not any huge, investment of time as opposed to reading the articles. People seem to have a real problem with that. So video it is. And for the rest of the year, this is now 2014, I produced the rest of these videos and a couple others. And that was the start of my YouTube channel. Now, obviously, because I had been, well, actually, earlier than that, I had lost the job in Minnesota with a Scientologist way before the disconnection thing happened. But I think it might have been related to it. I think it might have been, but I can't be sure. It could have been just adverse circumstances, and she couldn't afford to pay me, or the church might have leaned on her at that time. And I can't be sure one way or the other, but point is I lost the job with a Scientologist, and I had gotten another job with a couple doing property management. They were not Scientologists and never had anything to do with Scientology. And most important of all, they were willing to lend me a sympathetic ear. And I actually told them as my employers that I was going to start producing content about the Church of Scientology, and there might be some backlash. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but I thought, let's give it let's see what happens. And maybe I'll get fair game. Maybe they'll come after me. Maybe they'll picket my apartment. Maybe they'll start following me around. I don't know, but I want to be ready if they do. And so I told my employers about it, and they were amazing. They were so wonderful. They both were like, bring it on, and they weren't afraid of the Church of Scientology at all. That helped a lot. So again, I'm lucky that way. I've had a series of very fortunate circumstances, all things considered. So I was doing these videos, and nothing was really happening, which was kind of cool. I was okay with that, as far as any backlash from the church goes. But I was getting a lot of positive feedback and reinforcement. And what was also happening sort of behind the scenes was I was kind of trying to figure out how to come to terms with the loss of all of this stuff, all these people out of my life now, and my life totally changing, and my life goals totally changing, like everything changing. And that was hard. That was the really hard part. Because I wasn't emotionally mature enough to deal with it. Scientology had created a system which was actively suppressing emotions. And I was not able to deal with the loss and the trauma of what I was experiencing, And I was kind of going at it by myself. I hadn't gone and gotten any counseling or therapy or anything. I couldn't afford it. I didn't have health insurance. I didn't have any ability to do anything like that. So instead, what I was doing was I was reading books, and I was reading a lot of articles on the internet, and I was watching a lot of videos from people, and I was contacting people who'd been out of Scientology for a long, long time, who had already been down these roads. John Atack comes to mind as somebody who I hooked up with, who was really, really helpful to me, because he had deconstructed all of Scientology for himself, and he had gotten out back in the 80s. And he'd been involved in court cases and had been an expert witness, or had been a consultant, and not an expert witness, but he'd been a consultant, and he'd helped out with these cases. And he had done a real championship job of deconstructing a lot of Scientology's nonsense. So his work was helping me, and talking with him and talking with Tony and talking with other people through the forums and the chats and everything. And that was starting to open things up for me. And then
let me break in and ask a couple questions.
Yep.
So you're doing what job while you're starting your YouTube channel?
So
what type
I'm doing property management.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I'm working for a couple who own buildings in Minnesota and rent out the offices.
Okay, so you're single and you're working for property management, and you're doing a YouTube channel on the side.
Yep.
And then when you talk about like not coming to grips with the personal implications, so what are you struggling with? What does that look like in your life? How are the problems emerging in your life that you need to deal with? Are you saying you got addicted to something, or you like can't sleep, or you're depressed? Like,
Well, no. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Boy, there's just all these details to this stuff.
Oh, it's okay. I just am curious.
No. It's good. Okay, yeah, because the stuff kind of all jumbles together a little bit in some ways, but I mean, there were a lot of nightmares. I mean, there was PTSD symptoms all over the place. I didn't even know what PTSD was yet, right? I mean, I was kind of learning as I was going here, and I mean, I can't remember the exact date that I learned about PTSD, but it was, it was in this time period, right? 2014 to going into 2015 is where I really started getting a grip on what I had been involved in and like personally. And the emotional component was the hardest. And let me explain why. In Scientology, and especially in the Sea Org, as a staff member and as a Sea Org member, there's a guideline, there's a policy in the church that demands that you not show that any stress, trauma, misemotion, as I described it earlier. You can't show any of that stuff when you're on the job. And you go, okay. I mean, makes sense, right? You don't want to go to, and the analogy I've always made is you don't want to go to McDonald's and try to buy a hamburger from somebody who is crying because their mother died last night, right? I mean, that would be wholly inappropriate, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. At McDonald's, if your mom died last night and you call in and say, my mom died last night, I'm not coming in, they'll understand. They'll give you the day off. There's bereavement leave. There's all kinds of things that the society recognizes that there are emotional needs that people have. There's companies that are dicks, but, people understand this. Not in Scientology, they don't. If your mother died last night, it's shut up, buck up, stop crying, and, get to work. Drown your sorrows in your work, is sort of the attitude. And, your girl left you last night, drown your sorrows in your course work. Like Scientologists just don't care. Yeah. So there's a rule, and the rule is stated, no case on post. Okay, which means case is all your bullshit, all your stuff, all your emotional trauma and stress and all that stuff. All the stuff you go into auditing to handle is your case. And when you're on the job, you have to act as though that case does not exist. Fine. Like I said, you go into McDonald's, you don't want to be served by somebody who's crying. I get it. Like at a customer service level, that makes sense. A lot of Scientology staff members and Sea Org members are public facing. They're dealing with the public all the time. They need to be putting on a happy face and doing the customer service job. Understood. But Scientology, like everything else, dials it up to 11, where when you're living Scientology as a staff member, when you're living as a Sea Org member, you're only on post all the time.
Yeah.
The only time you're not on post is when you go home and go to bed at night. So no case on post stretched out over days, weeks, months, years.
Yeah. You're just always packing it down. You're packing it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And after you pack it down for a couple of years, you forget how to not do that.
Yeah.
You forget how to experience emotion in a healthy way.
Yeah.
You are also being indoctrinated with information that tells you that your emotions are illusions, are meaningless, that you're the one who controls your emotions.
Yeah.
24/7. Yeah. Right? That emotions are not, something that you need to dramatize. It all goes back to the reactive mind and all that stuff. So when you come out of a situation like that, and emotions was not something I recognized I had a problem with, right? My psychology was still like, what? And I had some major losses, some major, like they're gone. People are out of my life now that I loved, lots of them. So I didn't know how to process that. It's kind of like, if you had a breakup times 20, right? Times 30.
Yeah.
Like, how do you process that? Well, I had no idea. And all I knew how to do was suppress it and suppress it and suppress it. And so for all of 2014 and most of pretty good chunk of 2015, that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it started dawning on me I think it was about halfway through 2015, maybe a little earlier, but I think it was about a good year or two before it started dawning on me that how I was dealing with my emotional life was unhealthy.
Just avoiding,
like in a very significant way.
Avoiding your emotions.
Yeah, clamping them down, denying that they exist.
Yeah.
Avoiding is sort of recognizing they exist.
Yeah.
I didn't even acknowledge that they existed.
Yeah.
And I slowly started learning that your emotional health had something to do with your physical health and your mental well-being and stuff.
Right.
And it was a slow process, but I remember the moment. I don't remember exactly precisely where I was located, but I do remember the moment where I thought to myself for the first time, I'm not dealing with this well. I'm supposed to experience emotions, not avoid them or suppress them. And then once I thought that, I had to think, okay, well, how do I do that? And that opened up a whole can of worms. And so I started dealing with that and started learning that emotions are not things to be avoided, and they're not bad things, and they're just things. They're just a component of your life. And that if you try to suppress them or deal with them in an unhealthy way, that can have its own set of problems. And that perhaps some of the PTSD that I was just starting to learn about as a concept was coming from some of this emotional suppression. Maybe some of these nightmares had something to do with that, because I was having nightmares on a fairly regular basis about being trapped back in the Sea Org and back in Scientology and being stuck there. So that started kind of playing out, and I started reading about that and learning about it. And I'd been really studying a lot about critical thinking and logic and reason and logical fallacies. I'd been spending a lot of time on that. And now I started sliding more over to psychology. And that opened the door to sociology as well. And I think that's when I started talking in my videos more about psychology and sociology. And I started doing a Q&A because I'd been being asked all these questions all the time about my Scientology experiences online. I was willing to answer anybody about anything. But I was being inundated all the time with questions and stuff in the comment sections of my YouTube videos. People were asking me tons and tons of questions. And I thought, maybe I could do a Q&A show on my YouTube channel. And I could actually have a YouTube channel that doesn't just post irregularly. I'd started kind of really liking YouTube experience as a creator. I'd really been enjoying creating these videos and making the graphics and putting all this stuff together. It really appealed to my creative side. And I thought, well, maybe I could make a go of this on YouTube and have a more regular channel. And I learned that if you want to build up a channel and talk about stuff and build up a community, that you have to post routinely, regularly, every week. So I thought a Q&A show might be a great way to do that. So I started that up. And I started answering people's questions. And then they just kept coming and coming and coming. I can't believe I've had 230 plus episodes of Q&A since then. People just, and I don't repeat questions that often. So people just have a lot of questions about this stuff, and that opened the door to other videos and other things. And I think it was in 2016, I moved to Denver in late 2015. I think I left Minnesota. I had an opportunity to come here, and I took it because there was no reason for me to stay in Minnesota anymore. It was cold. I didn't like it there. I'd grown up in California. I appreciated having 4 seasons, but 8 months of winter was a bit much. So Denver presented itself as a possibility, and I don't want to go back to California. So I thought Denver might be a good middle ground.
For a job.
And it has been.
For a job.
Yeah. What's that?
For a job?
No, I actually just moved to get out of Minnesota, but there were some ex-Scientologists here. Like the Headleys live here and some other people live here, and they helped me get a job.
Okay.
And it was a job doing video work, which I was ecstatic about because I wanted to do video work. I loved making YouTube videos. I loved the time and the effort of doing graphics and animations and stuff. It was just fun. And it was a way to communicate better about what Scientology was all about and what I had been experiencing. So it was a real good fit for me as a person, as a creative person. I grew up wanting to be a writer, and I still consider myself primarily a writer. All my videos I wrote, they were written articles first. I could publish them that way. So so everything that was happening was sort of growing me as a person and as a creative person, and it was all going toward sort of acclimating and rehabilitating who I am for real, And when I was a Scientologist and a Sea Org member, I had to fit these things in as opportunities presented themselves, but it was always a round peg in a square hole kind of thing. I had to sort of morph my environment to fit some of my interests and sort of make it happen. Now it's the exact opposite. Now my whole life is built around the things that I really am good at and I enjoy doing. And that's, again, I fully recognize a bit of a blessing, right? Or a bit of a fortunate circumstance. I don't, give credit to any divine being. Blessing I use in a figurative sense, but that's kind of the circumstances of my life. So I moved to Denver, got this video work. I still was not doing YouTube as a full-time, dedicated, every week I'm, going to post stuff kind of situation. But after doing some video work stuff and started working on the channel more and more and decided, okay, it's time, let's do this, let's make this channel happen. And I started thinking that maybe that's how I could actually make a living. It slowly morphed into that. And I started posting more and more regular content and then weekly content. And then I started a podcast with a friend of mine and continuing to post videos. So I was posting stuff 3 times a week by the time 2016 was well in hand. And that went on for a few years that I was posting 3 times a week. And that's a lot of work. And so then this last year, I cut it back to 2 times a week just to give myself more research time and recovery time, because I needed time in between to study all the stuff I wanted to talk about, And that's kind of been the progression of my channel. The PTSD symptoms, as I learned, as I got the emotional valves kind of opened up, that stuff started kind of resolving. I still have nightmares, but not as frequently. And I don't stress over things the same way that I used to when it comes to Scientology related stuff. In other words, I'm no longer afraid of the Church of Scientology. And for a long time I was. Now I'm really not. I recognize that the Church of Scientology can be a formidable opponent. I'm not brushing off what Scientology is capable of. I'm just saying that I'm not actually, when I think about Scientology now, fear isn't what comes to mind, right? And I no longer, I think it was sometime, what is it? We're now in, I think it was sometime this year. I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, guessing, but it was sometime around then, I think, that it dawned on me that I had stopped thinking with Scientology words. And that was real important. But it took me 6-7 years to get there. And I learned early on that the language is really important, that you got to get rid of the language, got to get it out of your head. I can still use the language, but I don't think with the language. And that's a big difference. And that came from forcing myself to think of the English equivalents for the concepts that Scientology has and not using Hubbard's terminology, because there's a lot of baggage that comes with that terminology. And it's really, really important, I've learned, to a recovery process to not do that. So,
okay.
Anyway, so that's part of the progress that I've made, in this time.
So I have like a million questions now. So, okay. So did the church ever, you see these videos or, with the Leah Remini, A&E stuff, you see like the church having spies follow you, harass you with cameras, like insult you, chase you, knock on your door, just all the super hardcore hate tactics of Scientology, or the suing you into oblivion tactics that you hear about. Have you received either of those treatments from Scientology for your activism work?
I have not been sued by Scientology, and I have not been overtly followed around. There has not been a noisy campaign against me. When the day after I appeared on Leah Remini's show, a video appeared and a hate page about me on the Leah Remini Aftermath.com site that the Church of Scientology put together specifically to smear Leah and Mike and anybody connected with the show. That features a video from my ex-wife from the Sea Org, trash talking me and character assassinating me, and that's not really fun to watch, but that's there. And there's a bunch of lies about me, which I won't bother to repeat here, but let's just say there's a lot of inaccuracies in that article. So
the Scientology interviewed your ex-wife and has published untrue things about you to smear your reputation.
Absolutely. Yes, that's happened. Okay. That's still up. That site is still there. And they've paid money to get that at the top of Google searches. I know, because I've done, non-logged in Google searches of my name, and that's what comes up at the top of the string, right? And that means it's paid for. So that's a thing. And I've gotten, the internet trolling, and I've gotten some pretty bizarre and sometimes disturbing emails from people. But it's impossible to know for sure whether that's from Scientology. But at the same time, who else would bother to send me stuff like that? I'm not that big of a public figure. So I'm pretty sure that stuff comes from Scientology. They taunt me and they send me goofy stuff. But of course, they don't sign it Church of Scientology. So, you kind of wonder where some of this stuff comes from. I don't want to be one of those.
I'm looking at this video now. It's got to be hurtful to have your ex-wife speak unkindly about you publicly.
It is one of the weirdest feelings. I haven't been able to put into words how it feels. It's very weird. It's weird when you put yourself out as a public figure. It's weird that people start talking about you as though they know things about you that they don't.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, really weird when somebody from your past like that comes out and starts saying stuff about you that is absolutely not true. Anyway, it's weird. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I've been the subject. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. I've been the subject of people smearing really awful, spreading rumors and allegations of super hurtful and atrocious things. And so I just wondered whether I was the only one.
Oh, no. I'll tell you, it was weird. It was so weird. A couple months ago, I was on, I think it was Reddit maybe, or it was some forum where somebody definitely did not expect me to see what they were saying. And they were saying lies about me from that page, from the Scientology page, to other people, and they were embellishing on it. And I was watching this and I'm like, this is such a weird feeling that total strangers are lying to other total strangers about me.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just this very creepy, strange feeling. And I got, okay, that's what it means to be a public figure. I get it, but
yeah. And I have that too. I have these people that create fake internet profiles or fake Facebook profiles. And then they just, whoever I am friends with, wherever I comment, wherever I make a post, they're in there making the most horrible allegations that you could imagine. And it has caused people to decrease their support or take their support away or stop listening because as soon as you associate somebody with certain allegations, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. I don't want any part of this person. And it's a really effective way to really hijack and decrease the effectiveness of somebody speaking out to try and speak truth, honestly. And
that's exactly right. And I've experienced the exact same thing.
And it causes you to not be able to sleep at night. What if what if someone hurts me? What if they hurt my family? What if everything that I've tried to build gets destroyed? And it makes it so you want to do good, but you're always worrying about whether you're one rumor or one allegation, one false allegation away from complete annihilation.
That's exactly right. And that's a bit of a reflection on the society we live in now. But with these groups, we have more reason than other people to be afraid of that, because there are people who are literally paid money to character assassinate us online without us ever being able to fight back or even know who those people are. And it is more than disturbing. I agree that it has definitely cost me support, time, effort, people believing what I have to say because they believe what the church says. And sometimes it's not, the real scary stuff is when it's not obviously the church, but it is obviously the church, there's some other name. People who are not as familiar with what Scientology gets up to will give more credibility to, some of this stuff than they should. So it is damaging. It's damaging the reputation. It's damaging the income. It's, it's just annoying as hell on top of it. And here's the thing about this, I've gotten away with things that, as a church critic, that, say Leah and Mike, they're on a bigger stage than I am. So they're going to get more heat from the church, of course, than I am. But the thing about Scientology is they could change their mind about me tomorrow, and I could have people camped out on my front door. That's the scary thing about an organization like this, is just because they haven't done it yesterday doesn't mean they're not going to do it tomorrow. And that's a reality I have to live with. I've again considered myself very fortunate to have not gotten as much heat and pressure and stress and character assassination as Leah and Mike or Tony Ortega or some other critics. In a way, I've wondered about it and thought, well, that's, interesting. I mean, considering the amount of content and stuff I've put up, but okay, I'm not doing this to get fair gamed. I don't want that to happen to me. So I'm perfectly happy that it's not. But that doesn't mean it's not ever gonna, or that they aren't doing a covert campaign. And that's why I stress overt versus covert when I talk about what the church has done against my work.
Okay, so fair gamed is when they do, it's when they do things like what?
Stalking, harassment. I mean, any of this stuff is fair gaming. I have been fair gamed. I'm just not fair game to the level that, Leah and Mike are. Fair game comes from 1967. There was a policy letter Hubbard wrote, which was later canceled, but the practice is still in full force. And fair game means that this individual who is labeled as fair game means Scientologists are authorized to do anything they want to that person, and nothing bad. There will be no bad consequences to them from Scientology based on Scientology's ethics and justice codes. And Scientology has extensive lists of rules and guidelines and codes as to what you can and can't do. And for example, you're not supposed to badmouth fellow Scientologists in the public forum. You're not supposed to bring legal suit against Scientologists. You're not supposed to do this and this and this to them. Well, all that's canceled when you're declared fair game. Now Scientologists can do whatever they want to you, and the church will just go, yep, not a problem. We don't care. We're all good with that. And in the past, Hubbard actually recommended in writing using violence against church critics. He referred to, sort of euphemistically referred to shooting them with a .45 pistol. And we know that there has been breaking and entering and stalking and harassment, and private investigators sicked on people. There was one guy who had people camped outside of his house for months, just out there following him everywhere he went, following his wife everywhere he went. It was ridiculous. So this is the kind of stuff they can get up to when they really decide that they need to do something about you,
Wow. And this website, Leah Remini Aftermath, looks like that's a Scientology website.
It's completely a Scientology website.
To fair game Leah Remini.
Leah, Mike, and everybody who was ever on the show. They all get hate pages. It's like Oprah. Everybody gets a hate page. Everybody gets fair gamed,
This is helping me understand what's happened to me, because I haven't been thinking about this in the way that you're describing the way science, but I've been trying to make sense of the hate and the adversity that I've experienced. and thinking of it as coming from the church and from people in the church helps me think better about what's happened to me, because I haven't thought enough about how the church might be involved in the things that I've had to face.
Oh yeah, no, it's a thing. I'm just going to stretch my legs a little here. If you don't want to be paranoid, right? This is the constant struggle for us as Scientology critics, right? Is you don't want to be paranoid. You don't want to think every single little criticism or troll comment is, must be from the church or must be from OSA. But you have to deal with the reality that these are people who monitor our internet 24/7. These are people who have people dedicated to watching social media. These are people who are dedicated to and who hire private investigators to follow you and stalk and harass you. The stalking can occur without you knowing anything about it. The Church of Scientology followed, David Miscavige had 2 private investigators follow a man for 25 years, and he never picked up that he was being followed. 25 years, they were monitoring this guy's communications, friendships, relationships, jobs. They were monitoring everything about his life and reporting every week back to David Miscavige on what he was doing, where he was living, who he was meeting with. And the guy never had any idea that was happening. So that's why you see me be a little circumspect about the fair gaming, because I could have been being followed around for the last 7 years and have no clue that that's what was happening. There's a noisy and there's a covert way of doing this. And Scientology has engaged in both over the years.
Yeah. And I'm being told more and more that the Mormon Church does this too, with people like me, Sam Young, Bill Reel, others.
Yeah, it's a thing. And when you know that that's a reality, it's not paranoia to wonder, where are these comments coming from? Where's this vitriol coming from? Where's some of this anger coming from? Because some people, you wonder, like, you get these like way out of proportion responses to some of your work. And you're like, what is this? It's just kind of strange. Well, that's cults.
What about other ex-Scientologists making you an enemy and targeting you? Because that's been some of my worst, and I talked to Sam Young about this. He's the guy who's doing activism to help prevent child abuse and to help prevent these one-on-one interviews with church leaders where kids are getting raped and abused and shamed and all that, pornography and masturbation shame and LGBT reparative therapy stuff is coming out of these one-on-one interviews with bishops. And Sam, talked to me about the friendly fire and how oftentimes his worst adversity is from other ex-Mormons and other post-Mormons. Have you had to deal with any of that? Ex-Scientologists, turf battles, envy, jealousy, and ex-Scientologists making you a target?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about that, because I get that, and it's probably the worst of the worst.
I know it can be, and that's the thing that I have to balance a lot of the Scientology.
What has happened with you? What happened?
Well, I'll tell you. So, but first, I want to say something about this, because it's important that I say this as a precursor. Okay. I've experienced a lot of shellackings, a lot of nonsense, a lot of trolling from ex-Scientologists. There are people who absolutely hate me and everything I stand for, and call me a hypocrite and call me a liar and say I don't know what I'm talking about. And the motivations for this are legion. I mean, there is jealousy. There's no question there's jealousy, because I have a platform and it's a growing platform and they don't. And they're jealous of that. That's definitely the case. There's also just people who disagree with what I have to say, and they see things differently. They like some problems, some aspects of Scientology that I've trashed, or some experiences of Scientology that they've had that I didn't have, or that I don't see it that way. And so therefore I don't know what I'm talking about. Or, I never worked directly under David Miscavige like they did, so I can't understand, blah, 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 right? It's like, okay, got it. My view is that we are all facing a common enemy, and the bickering and the nonsense and the drama and the feuding and stuff that goes on in this world, in the ex-Scientology world, is frankly ridiculous to me. I mean, I've dived into the dramas. I've dived into the personality clashes. I've had other exes fighting other exes, and I've tried to play peacemaker and almost routinely get egg on my face for it. And I try to keep that kind of stuff behind the scenes, even not on the public front, because I'm aware that there's a public perception from non-former members of the community. And I would like to have it be as unified a message as possible. But I've come to learn that that is impossible. People are the way they are, and not everybody is going to be on the same page. I would prefer that we all recognize and realize that we are not each other's enemies, and that it's the cults that are the bad guys here, not each other. But again, I've had to give up on that rather optimistic view, because there are some people who just will not be placated, and they will not see reason. And I don't know what to say about them, except I have to move on from that. So I have, I've always tried to go back and give people a second or even third chance when I block them or they block me or something. About a year ago, I did a whole Facebook revamp and unblocked everybody and tried to make good with people and stuff. And in a couple of cases that worked, and in some cases it didn't. And
the people continue to be, they continue to be, have animosity and try and undermine what you're doing. And so you have to block them again. I've had to do that so much, and I felt so alone, because all these ex-Mormons are like, John, you block people, you block too many people. And I'm like, but if somebody is trying to use your platform to destroy you, and you're just trying to do good, and then all these people want to destroy you from your own platform, do you let them stay on your platform and destroy you, or do you block them, not just to keep them from destroying you, but to preserve your own sanity, mental health, and well-being, because it's just toxic to be around people that want to destroy you?
Exactly. And this is where you have to make a very clear, statement about, disconnection and forced shunning is bad because it's enforced, not because disconnecting from a toxic element in your life is a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with disconnecting from toxic elements in your life, including people who don't have your best interests at heart. And unfortunately, when you start uttering opinions on a public forum, there are going to be people who are going to disagree with you in the community or outside of the community. And there are a couple of these people who somehow feel that it's their mission to educate other people about the evils of you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give that person.
Welcome to my life, Chris Shelton.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, it's all of us. And I'm going to give this person carte blanche to character assassinate me on my own Facebook page.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I tend to block them and move on, mute and ignore. It's been a hard-won lesson. I've tried to reason with, I've tried to reach out, I've tried to apologize. I have literally publicly apologized for blocking people, saying, okay, let's make this work. And it doesn't. And you realize that, it's a harsh, but it's a harsh truth, but one that we have to acknowledge, that not everybody who comes out of these groups comes out and gets themselves the psychological help that they need.
Yeah.
And I am not trying to put myself on some pedestal or say that I've got all this figured out, because believe me, I don't. If you've listened to everything I've said here, you know that I know that I got a long way to go with stuff, and I am far from perfect. But you will not see me trashing other Scientology critics in the public forum. You will never see me do that.
Yeah, I have that. I have that belief too. But it's just so hard to be fighting. It's hard enough to fight on one front a multi-billion, in my case, a multi-$100 billion organization. And again, when I say fighting them, it's not that I'm trying to take them down. I'm trying to promote truth and enlightenment within an organization that doesn't always want truth and enlightenment, right? It's hard enough to battle that organization with hundreds of billions of dollars in assets. But I'm also fighting this two-front war of all these disgruntled ex-Mormons who want to destroy me and would rather focus all their time and energy and efforts on destroying me. And it's exhausting, and it's extremely fraught and complicated, and wonderful. Like, it's wonderful, and it's incredibly difficult.
Exactly. I will throw one more thing into the mix on this, just so people in the general public know that this can happen, because it definitely does. It's documented that this has happened. So so I want people to know about this. Sometimes those ex-members are being riled up against you by somebody else in the back that you don't know about.
Yeah.
And that somebody else is working for the church. And that is that's a covert operation that these organizations absolutely do engage in. They know who your connections are, because these guys in the OSA area, and I'm assuming in the Mormon church it would be similar, these guys don't have anything to do all day but this kind of work. This is their job. And in the case of the Sea Org, they have 17, 18-hour work days. So these guys will figure out, they will literally map out on a piece of paper. I've seen this. They map out all your connections. Who are your friends? Who are your best friends? Who are their friends? Who are their friends? These very complicated conspiracy theory kind of string charts of all your connections, right? But it's not conspiracy theory. They're just mapping all the people you know. And then they find the guy who doesn't like you, and they'll make a sock account, and they'll become friends with that guy, and they'll start feeding him dirt, or her, about you, dirt, right? And then that person starts repeating their lines, right? And I knew this was happening when I see some of these critics of me who are former Scientologists literally repeating what's on that webpage you looked up about me. They repeat those lines, right? I'm a deadbeat dad, I'm a this, I'm a that, right? Where are they getting that from, right? In whose interest is it to say that kind of thing about me? Church Scientology.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is the case with every single critic, not by any stretch of the imagination. People have their own opinions and they go off and they come up with their stuff. But we do have documented cases of these OSA people creating puppet accounts and riling up people in the community against other people in the community. This is literally a mission statement they have in their policies to do this, to disrupt the activities of the enemy. So that's just something else to consider. It's impossible to prove. You don't even want to spend any time dealing with any of this crap, but it is one reason why this stuff happens.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I can't tell you how helpful this is for me to talk to somebody else in a similar position and to hear you you're basically reflecting my life and your experience, and it's incredibly validating. And I felt similar things with Lloyd Evans.
He's experienced it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all do, because there's a lot of jealousy in the community and stuff. You put yourself up there on a platform and you start getting people to notice. And, some of these people tried to do that same thing and they didn't get noticed.
Yep.
And I don't, some of these people are people that I would want to feature on my channel, whose stories I would want to tell.
In my case, they're people that I have. In my case, they're people that I have featured on my channel. They're former people that I supported, loved, nurtured, grew, and then they turn on you and try and destroy you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen that as well. I'm not going to name any names.
No,
but
I don't want you to. I don't want you to.